Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Fernay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Fernay.
Hey, welcome back to the Maryland Crabs. We are back again. It is Thursday. It's going to be noon. We're actually recording this the week before. But this is John Fernay, and we've got Tim Hamilton on the other side of the table. And this week, we're actually in the courthouse.
I find myself in a courthouse.
We have not been indicted.
No.
I want to go on record as saying that. Yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, well, that must be a trick. That was our guest. That was Anne Arundel County State's Attorney Wes Adams. And we're here. We're going to talk a little bit about the State's Attorney's Office, about some of the great things that are happening out of here, the election and everything else. But before we get into that, make sure you follow us on Twitter at MDCrabsPodcast. You can check us out on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Google Play, the Maryland Crabs Podcast. If you need to send us an email, info@themarylandcrabs.com, or the website is also themarylandcrabs.com. And Facebook, of course, the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
And now we're out of time. Thank you very much for coming in.
That's about it. But like I said, we've got Anne Arundel County State's Attorney Wes Adams, who is in the midst of his first term of office.
And when you walked in, I kind of heard in my head that dunk-dunk thing from Law & Order.
Yeah, no, we don't get accompanying music as we walk on through.
You really ought to think about it.
We can probably do that.
It works out for them really well.
I don't know if the county council would put that in the budget, having a traveling band walking alongside.
Well, you just put it on your phone. Just play it when you walk in.
I heard
dramatic.
Steve's getting the Hail to the Chief thing when he comes in now.
I do know that I think the Law & Order is a ringtone that you can download on your phone, but I still go with the standard Verizon... Yeah.
How much Law and Order effect do you get where people think they know more about what they do just because they watch all this? I do it all the time. I'm like, that's fruit from the poisoned tree. You can't use that.
It's actually the poisonous tree, not the poisoned tree. But
well, I guess we're done here now.
For a long time, and in Maryland case law, we had a thing called the CSI Effect, which actually, up until a few years ago, the judges had given you could request a CSI instruction, and that talked about how the state isn't basically required to prove guilt like a TV show, because inevitably on CSI,
you have more than an hour. First of all,
well, that's one right. thing, but I don't
no
have
commercial breaks.
the runway model crime scene technician that could walk into.
You really got to talk to counsel. You really ought to get one because they look great.
But inevitably, one of these people walk into a 6,000 square foot garage. They find a magic cat hair, and 10 minutes later, they've analyzed it. And they're like, "Oh, Fernay's the killer." And somehow,
wait a minute.
But somehow, stuff like that doesn't happen. And so, what you were finding is, while those shows did a great job, piecing together hypothetical criminal situations, sort of taking real life possibilities, and pushing the envelope on what forensic technology could do, it was putting us at somewhat of a disadvantage, because then people would expect us to come in and match TV.
I just think about where you're looking at the picture and you're going, enhance, and it's like zooming in and just...
Well, I'll give you a real life example. I prosecuted a double homicide of a mom and a daughter, and we found them burnt up in a car. The one thing that was left over was a beech tree leaf. It was tucked into the victim's
a leaf from a tree.
From a tree.
Okay.
And we tracked back to a place where we thought the bodies were being held for 24 hours. And I tried to pull DNA out of the beech tree leaf and match it to the beech trees on the property. Because you can match DNA from... Trees have DNA similar in the same way that human beings do. And so we literally tried to, for the first time ever in the state... The only problem was that because of the accelerant used to burn the car, it had degraded the DNA inside the leaf to the point where we weren't really able to match it up to any specific tree on the property where we thought the bodies had been held. But that is an outgrowth of what CSI is all about.
And I was kidding about it, but also I heard that there is an effect of that where people, it's very basic, but people have learned how to destroy evidence. For example, like bleach down drains and stuff like that,
Sure.
where you do get that sort of effect.
Sure. So and
can you really track internet history and stuff like that? Like see where people have gone on the.
You want to give me your phone?
No,
Okay.
it's off right now, and battery's really low. So
There's some great tools cyber-wise that we can do, and it's the interest. There is definitely a learning. I mean, criminals learn, and prosecutors keep going, and there's a.
It's like an arms war.
It's a game of cat and mouse.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't ever start. I'll tell you what. Let's take one step back forward, back forward. Boy, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, we'll edit that.
Let's take one step backwards. Nobody really seems to know. Not nobody, but a lot of people don't really know what the state's attorney is. Okay, we hear this term all the time. I mean, up in Baltimore with the riots. I mean, we heard about Mosby. We've heard, we've got the press releases. Wes Adams, state's attorney,
Sure.
Has announced and everything else. What is it that what is the role of the state's attorney in the criminal justice system?
Sure, and so it's a great question, and it's one that I get constantly because people confuse state's attorney with, say, attorney general. And I always try to explain we're called state's attorneys because we represent the laws of the state of Maryland. And each state's attorney we have our own jurisdiction, so there's 24 of us. So the state's attorney is the elected official that heads the prosecutors. And each jurisdiction has a prosecutor's office or a constitutional office. And our job is to build, investigate, and eventually present every criminal case that occurs in our jurisdiction, every violation of the state law, to a judge or a jury for resolution, whether it's guilt, innocence, diversion, mediation. But that is our primary responsibility as a prosecutor. We are the prosecutors. We're the arm that enforces the law here in our jurisdiction. That's our basic role. And we do that.
Now, is this organization, is this department, a division, is this a state office or is this a county office?
It's again another great question. We are a state constitutional
You give
office.
him a big head. Just don't compliment him.
They're good questions because if you have the question, then I think other people do, and it's great that somebody wants to, or that people really want to understand what our exact role in the county government is. So, I am not a division of the county executive. I do not fall under the county executive. We are a separate office. We work.
Right, you eat crabs with them at the crab feast.
No, we do more than that. I mean, county executive Steve Shue and I, we work very closely together.
But
We have to because his agenda in keeping the county safe funds me and helps me do what I need to do. But it's funny, we are a state office, but we're really funded by the county. So we're a state constitutional mandate that the county must fund to make work.
Okay, this is very similar to the election office, I think, election bureau, because I think I remember talking to Joe Torre once who said that he's a state employee.
You got the Yankees manager on?
Yeah. That's what I thought. I was getting all excited, and it was like,
we were really embarrassed when we got here. All our questions are way off. Be prepared for the wrong guy.
And I mean, as a Red Sox fan, he was a hell of a manager. But I watched him growing up I'm from Long Island.
Right.
If you guys didn't know that.
Where are you from, Long Island?
Town called Bethpage, where the golf course is?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, where they had the U.S. Open there.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
Right, Bethpage Black.
You don't have the accent.
It was.
We just got to get you drinking.
It was nicely cajoled out of me when I got to undergrad. So
my father was from Queens, so you couldn't hear his accent until he got mad.
They didn't like
so
me talking like this, so they thought Long Island boy, that doesn't sound too smart. So
the case went down the toilet. Yeah.
So it took a little while to learn how to speak properly.
It's very Eliza Doolittle sort of thing. It's someone training you with records.
No, just you listen to enough people long enough, and really in law school, they as a trial lawyer and part of your trial ad, they want you to speak slowly and enunciate and speak clearly. And I just
where'd you go to law school?
I went to Catholic University in Washington D.C.
Oh, my sisters went there, and my mom. They all got their masters there too.
It's a great place.
They're Catholic.
Had fun.
What was the bar down there? Kitty O'Shea's? Is that right? You're probably studying too hard.
You got to narrow it down to one.
Yeah.
It was more down. No, Kitty. I thought it was Mick O'Shea's. Kitty O'Shea's.
I never went. My sisters got their mail sent there.
Kitty O'Shea's.
That's fun.
More down by Union Station. We hung out down there. Irish Times.
Irish Times. Yeah, we used to go there before the Redskins win.
That's nice. So you're mandated by the state.
Yes.
Funded by the county.
Yes.
Now, do you fight like the school board for your money?
I don't know if we fight anybody for our money.
You'd win. You're really tall.
You submit a budget to the county executive?
The county executive actually proposes a budget for us. We talk and work with them to make sure that we are, that I can do my job and protect the citizens with criminal prosecution and, work on some of the other things. We're really a public safety agency. I mean, my lawyers do work to prosecute crimes. I mean, that is our core function, but I kind of look at the job a little bit more expansively than that. We really tried to create a lot more outreach since I've been in here, and you guys know. I mean,
let's go down that road a little bit there because you're the guy that's on the other side of the table in the courtroom. You're trying to send whoever it is to whatever punishment it is that they may or may not need, hold them accountable. But there's an awful lot extra that you're doing.
Yep.
I mean, I've been to several of the Not My Childs, and usually you look around the corner and there's a real tall guy in the corner, and that's Wes Adams ready for his speaking there. You drug court,
yes,
which has just been a wonderful success. Talk a little bit about the outreach that the state's attorney's office is doing. Here in Anne Arundel County on that, if you could.
Sure. I mean, and it's a big deal because I look at being a prosecutor as not just holding someone accountable for crime, but I think we have a responsibility for trying to prevent crime. And one of the things that I really tried to do when we come in is develop a program or develop programs that keeps us out in the community so that people understand what it is the state's attorney's office does, so that they're not afraid of coming into a courthouse, so that they can arm themselves with tools to protect themselves from crime, so that when there are opportunities to divert somebody out of crime, that we can succeed in putting good people back. If you think about it, most people in crime don't walk into the top of the criminal pyramid. They're walking into low levels, and if we keep recycling them back out in a way that escalates criminal behavior, I'm actually working against what my job is as a public safety agent.
Well, I feel like society in general,
put yourself out of business.
Yeah,
not a bad.
Well, and I do say that to a lot of people. I'm one of the few guys that you'll ever meet who works to put themselves out of business.
Right.
And I would love to do that, by the way.
Yeah.
Society in general, I think, and you see that it's especially with the recent national election, has been looking at lawbreakers. It's far more punitive than it is rehabilitative.
Rehabilitative.
Thank you. So you went to lawyer school.
I don't know whether that's just narrative from one side or the other.
It is.
I think that, look, I'm not a big fan of giving everybody a trophy. I think there needs to be some failure in life. It's how we learn as people. I'm a big fan of holding people accountable for what their actions are. I grew up playing ball. I played baseball and football through college and a little bit of baseball afterwards. And it's a meritocracy. If you catch the ball, you're on the field. If you can hit, you stay in the lineup. So you fail, they don't say, well, we're gonna expand the lineup to 15 people just because I got 15 guys that can hit. They say no, that top 9 that are productive hit. And so I like the notion of being able to hold people accountable, but we have to be able to teach and grow and have people succeed along the way. So,
well, interesting. We were talking before you came in the room, and I was talking about someone I know that was caught up in heroin.
Yep.
That this was in Western PA, and which is a very economically depressed area, and heroin is a serious problem there as it is everywhere else. But I saw it close up, and what was interesting to me was, there was a punishment aspect that went to it, and of course, because it's illegal, because it wasn't just he was using, he was also transporting, and
Right.
But he turned state's evidence, and so he got a second chance. But coming out of it, it was interesting seeing the cycle that he was in. Is that one? First of all, you're never free from it. You're always just a hair away from falling back into it.
Crabs in a pot. Since I'm on the
exactly right
on crabs,
and then but the second part, look at you closing that loop.
But, do my best.
But the other part was him getting a job, him being able to go out of town to get a job. It was just that all of a sudden, when you say your life is ruined, I mean that is kind of a hyperbolic. Because it was, you don't think about what that means. But once you have that on your record, once you're in the court system, going straight becomes very difficult. So it seems to be a means to an end to all of a sudden criminal activity. Once you get in, that seems the only way to make a living for some people. And then other people would say that's lazy, that there is a way out. You paid your debt to society, but now you've got to take the repercussions of that as well. That goes beyond the punishment.
Well, for some of that, when you think about cycles like heroin, and my family, like many others, and I say it when I go out and talk, one of the reasons why I spend so much time out in the schools and working with kids and with the Not My Childs is, one, I'm the child of an addict. My dad was an alcoholic and an addict growing up, and I spent time in program, and I have a brother-in-law right now who's in his third stint of rehab. He's a heroin addict, started on painkillers. And you look at people as they go through the system, and there has to be a way to work with people who want to get help. There has to be.
Right.
You don't turn away someone who wants to get help. But what you realize, if you've grown up in the addicted community at all, is that I can't make someone get help. So what's great about something like our drug court program is you're taking people who are willing to get help, who may not understand or have the right mechanisms to succeed when they want help. Because not everybody can succeed even if they want help.
Well, they've also probably all come at the drug court. They probably also all had their come to Jesus moment, too.
No, and if you listen, John, if you come to a drug court graduation, you'll hear a lot of people who come into drug court and say, I never came to drug court to get clean. I didn't realize it until I was in drug court that I needed to get clean and how I could get clean. And so it's a really interesting dynamic. A lot of them are willing once they get in it after a while, but you'll see people kind of get in, they fail a little bit, they feel the bite of sanction, they have their hitting bottom or their come to Jesus moment, as you said it, in the midst of being in drug court. They don't enter it because they've had their come to Jesus. Some of them do, and I don't.
Right.
But not everybody starts in that model. And what's great about drug court is that we give people a time to change behavior. Think about, and I want you guys to think about just sort of the bell curve, and this is what I think a lot of people miss about heroin recovery or any addiction recovery is, if my drug addict is starting drugs at 14 years old, let's pick an average age, 14, and you can't get into my adult drug court program until you're 18. Wow. But the reality likely is that it's going to be longer than that. You've been modeling abusive drug behavior for 4, 5, 6 years. Do you think that I'm just going to stop you at a 28-day inpatient? I'm going to redirect 6 years of behavior, and you really think it's longer than that because by the time they pick up their drug, they've been modeling some type of abusive behavior before that. But do you think my 28-day inpatient program is going to redirect 6 years of behavior? So I'm throwing that back at you.
Yeah, no.
Because you said throw some things back.
But
So there. Do you think, my question to you...
I didn't realize that. But
and so that's why the drug court program that goes over 18 months, that it's a long-term behavioral modification. I'll throw it at you in a different sense. Patuxent, our Patuxent Institute, best success rate for recidivism of any incarcerated program in the state of Maryland. Patuxent, the people who come out of Patuxent, inmates who come out of Patuxent, are twice as less likely to commit a crime as regular Gen Pop. But
why is that?
Because Patuxent takes their youthful offender program takes kids, younger people, and they spend years working with them, developing skills, developing decision-making skills, developing life skills, developing choice skills, so that when they exit criminal behavior or when they exit incarceration, they have a foundation to live in civil society correctly. And so
that's providing with the tools, and that's what I was talking about before. Is that people come out of the system, they don't have any tools to cope with what real life, what straight life is.
And the same thing with our drug.
The ones that they learned while they were
exactly.
Right.
And how many times have you heard that people come out? What was that in Shawshank Redemption? It took me 20 years in prison to turn me into a criminal. That was.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no different than public housing too, as well. I mean, if you don't. We talk with
Robert Eve said that.
If you don't get the tools in public housing, once you get out of it, if you don't have the tools to figure out where to go to get an apartment, to get out of that, to get the job and whatnot, you're just going to go turn back and you're going to go back to selling drugs or violence.
But addiction, even drug addiction, alcohol addiction, I've been thinking about this because it's interesting to me because you bring up how do you undo a 6-year habit with the 28-day program? And I've always wondered the efficacy of like an one size fits all when it comes to addiction. Because some people, it may be chemical. Some people, there is an underlying reason why they do it. But it's also perspective because, they say you have to hit rock bottom. And I always tell this story when I was 22. A guy I worked with, this was in D.C., actually, and he came to me and he was in his 30s and he said, I'm going to go into a program. I said, what's going on? He goes, well, my drinking, I think, is really out of hand. And I said, whatever I'm 22. It's the early 2000s. And I said, so what if... whatever you do, I'm behind you. And so he came back the next day, and we went out, and he got a drink. I'm like, I thought you were in a program. He goes, oh, no, I'm fine. He goes, I've never lost a house. I've never lost my job. My family's still there. So for him, he went to AA meeting or whatever, Al-Anon, whatever it was, and he heard these horror stories about people, and it was that perspective that, he probably did have a problem, but for him, he goes, I was almost embarrassed to say what my problem was, that I drank a little bit too much each night. So my point is that, you can have a spectacular flame out or burnout when it comes to heroin. You get caught up in the legal system or what have you. But what about those people, it's quiet addiction almost, where they're functioning and they're fine, they're not breaking law, and no one knows that they have a problem. And that's got to be a miserable, lonely, hopeless existence because you don't have a cry for help because you never hit rock bottom.
Well, hitting rock bottom and needing help, I suppose, are two. They're I don't know if they're mutually exclusive, but they're certainly, you don't always need to hit rock bottom to need the help.
Right.
So
no, that's my point.
Yeah.
But you don't know you need help until
you're not when you're. So when I see hitting rock bottom, it's when you're ready for help.
Mm-hmm.
Needing help and being ready for help are two different things.
Right.
Because the guy who's shooting up, who could potentially get in the car and drive and kill somebody, or doesn't take care of their kids, or is diverting money that they could have otherwise used to feed their child into the needles, into feeding their arm, that person needs help. Whether they're aware of that help or not or their need for help is two different things. But, like I said, my personal experience is watching somebody feed the vein instead of feeding their kid. And that's...
Well, and that brings it up. So I know I have a lot of friends who are police officers, and, it's funny, they have that kind of veneer that, nothing bothers them. And you get a couple drinks into them, and they'll tell you about one or two cases that just...
Cases always bother.
Yeah, and it just doesn't get away from you. Do you have those? I know you do, but do you have one that, like, from when you started, and you don't have to get specific, but that where you still think about from time to time, said, I wonder whatever happened to that person, or, just you let one get away, or even on the other side, that you made a difference, and, that...
So I can tell you, you always keep in mind the ones you made a difference. Because I did homicides for so long that the ones that got away, they were already away. But a particular homicide, it stemmed out of a shooting. So there was an earlier shooting, and my victim ended up talking about the case. They thought that he had snitched on him.
Right.
And they took my victim and his cousin out for his 21st birthday. And on the way back, they tried to kill them both. They executed the one kid in the car, and they shot the other one. Gun jammed, kid dove out onto the side of the road, scrambled down into the woods, kind of collapsed at a fire station, and ended up surviving. And this was a kid who was involved in the drug trade, and it was up in Baltimore, so, from a poor socioeconomic area, was a street kid, hard, did a lot of, involved in criminal activity. And over the course of a year and a half or 2 years when it took to prosecute the case, by the time we finished, and the mom was just a mom and a couple of sisters that were really his support network, slowly changed, went through the system, kind of was forced to change because by testifying, he put himself back at risk. Got the kid. He ended up getting into trade school, became a plumber, became a master plumber, moved down to North Carolina, took the woman who had his child, his baby's mom,
That's awesome.
and married her, and got himself out of the city, out of that lifestyle, and is, hopefully growing old with his kids or multiple children. To me, that's a great story. But I've spent most of my career taking people from the worst portion of their lives, losing mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, to murder, and walking them through the criminal justice system, giving them a voice, giving them some sense of justice, and then helping them establish a new normal. And so I can point to 147 families that walked into the criminal justice system at the lowest part of their lives and walked out giving, with handing me a T-shirt, a memorial T-shirt, or, writing a letter to my boss, or calling me back, or, if you followed my campaign there, one mom and dad campaigned with me. They came out.
Right, I remember that.
The Setons, they come out and they tell parents, people, the story of what I did for them, and that to me is wild stuff.
Well, your history with prosecution, it was mostly a homicide prosecutor in PG County?
No, I probably did more cases in Baltimore City.
Okay.
I prosecuted almost 80 homicides in Baltimore City, and it was probably more like 50 in Prince George's County, but I was the division chief for all of the homicides that came through Prince George's County over about a 6-year period.
Okay. And that was immediately prior to
Correct.
running for office here.
Correct.
Interesting. We talked about heroin a little bit, and when we were talking to Chief Pristoop, he had mentioned that Anne Arundel County is the third highest use of heroin arrests behind Baltimore City and Baltimore County.
Okay.
That's not the right words, but why do you think that is? I mean, when you look at, you hear that heroin is a cheap drug. It's an easy drug. You would think in some of the more, I don't want to say depressed counties, but some of the more rural counties out there.
Does heroin include all opiates? Is it would that be like Oxycontin and all those as well?
We break it down. When we talk about overdoses, we talk about opiate overdoses. We don't necessarily restrict it only to heroin.
Right.
But look, I can give you a couple of anecdotal, obvious ones. We are geographic border to Baltimore City, whereas Prince George's County actually, I still have a lot of police officers that I work with. They haven't seen the same heroin effect there. I will say that Anne Arundel County represents about 9.25% of the total statewide population, and we've accounted for about 8.5% of the deaths. So, if you look at it
so it's fairly
1-to-1, we're actually less than what our population percentage is. Our heroin death percentage is slightly less than what our.
So in a zero-sum game, that means that Baltimore would probably be it's whatever. That's probably 20% of the population. It's probably
Baltimore's about 600,000 people. It's about 10% of the population. They account for 400 opioid deaths. This, a little over 400 opiate deaths according to the Sun.
And it's funny if you broke that down. I was going to say it's funny, it's hilarious, but it's probably certain neighborhoods. If you're looking at the hot zones, you're not even looking at Baltimore. You're looking at certain neighborhoods. But
if you look at the rise of where it's coming from, so many studies now are linking it, or articles are linking it to painkiller use. Abuse coming out of painkillers, abuse coming out of prescriptions. When you think about that could be anybody.
It can. It scares the hell out of me. I tore my knee a couple of years ago, and coming out of the hospital, they loaded me up with. They gave me some morphine. They gave me, whatever, Percocets, the whole. I had a cocktail, and they said you got it. Their message to me getting out of the hospital is get ahead of the pain. Get ahead of the pain.
Yep.
And I'm like, I don't know what my body is going to do when I get ahead of the pain.
Did they give you any warnings that any of these are particularly?
No, I got next to nothing coming out of it. And now this was up in Baltimore, but it wasn't Anne Arundel Medical Center. But and I turned around. I think I took a couple of the morphine pills.
Okay.
I felt a little bit tight in my chest, a little bit short on some breath. I tried to call. They didn't have a nurse's line to see if that was kind of normal.
Right.
And I said, screw it. And I said, no, I'm just going to deal with the pain and see what it is. It wasn't that bad. Tylenol worked really well.
Pain won't kill you.
I double dosed on Tylenol.
Right.
And, as soon as I was out of any kind of a pain area with the surgery, they went into a baggie and I went over to the police station and dropped them in the box. I just didn't want them in the house. I didn't want to give it, for my kids to see what they were or, whatnot. I had a friend of mine that also had surgery.
Oh, you can do that? You can give it to the police department?
Yeah, they've got drop boxes in all of the Annapolis police station and all of the county police stations.
All the county police stations, yeah. So, John, I had a disc fused, or 2 vertebrae fused in my back. And coming out of the surgery, they give you the morphine pump, right?
Right.
It's a 6-minute dose of morphine. I was using it maybe once every 75 to 90 minutes for the first 12 or 14 hours. By the end of that time, I was pretty much not using it. I never reported to the docs a pain level of more than 5. they ask you on the scale of 1 to 10.
1 to 10.
These little happy faces and stuff.
Made it through my entire second day without using my nurses were laughing at me. They're like, you're not using the pump. Got a little uncomfortable just from
They're walking by and pressing the button for you.
Stay on my back.
Sure.
The second day. So a little bit of morphine when I went to sleep. The third day, up walking, which is required before they'll let you leave the hospital, but still never reporting a pain level of more than 5. They gave me 90 hydrocodone walking out the door. That's 90. Now, that's 7.5 days. I think it's the state, they look at prescribing no more than 7 days, but it's like $7,500 street level narcotics.
I was going to say it's a good part. It's a good part-time job.
Is that how much that is?
Yeah, it's about $80 a pill.
Get out of here!
No, I'm not kidding. But
it's your office, so you can stay. But
the pharmacist came in to talk to me about it, and he comes in to give me my prescription, and he talks. The only thing they tell you about when they're giving you an opiate is, you ready? Constipation. Yep. That is the only thing that they warn you about, is that an opiate can constipate you. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, are you kidding me? We are in the midst of a heroin crisis. It's coming from pills, and you can't explain to me that this is potentially addicting. Do you have an offer? And the poor pharmacist didn't know what he was walking into. No. I got him cornered in my suite, my hospital room for a little while, and I don't know if I'm yelling at him, but I'm excited about this. I'm going, come on, man, this is what I deal with every day. I got people dying.
He wants to calm you down and give you a sedative.
He couldn't wait to get out of my room. But that to me, so like I've talked to Delegate Kipke, the House Minority Leader, and one piece of legislation we've talked about is having doctors, pharmacists warn patients about the addictive quality of opiates as pain meds, and offering alternative meds. Why should, like you said, John, Tylenol and Advil should knock out most pain. Shouldn't a doctor want to know if I'm 4 days in and I'm hitting 2 hydrocodone every 4 hours, which is 12 a day?
Right.
Shouldn't a doc want to know that, hey, look, I'm 4 days out and your surgery didn't work, I'm still in a ton of pain? Or wouldn't it raise a red flag to a doc that's, hey, maybe something's wrong here with my patient?
I will say, though, so I had a bulging disc about 1.5 years ago, and the pain was exquisite. It was amazing.
Oh, it's great stuff.
Yeah, well, so I went to the doctor, and I went to the emergency room, and they whacked me with a bunch of stuff, and so they gave me a prescription of Vicodin, I think. Yeah. And I have a resistance to opiates, so I don't get that rush. I don't, that's what I was looking forward to, but didn't get it. And the pain was still there, so I called I called up the pharmacist and said, or I called the doctor. He goes, well, we're going to switch you to Dilaudid instead of this. So I called the pharmacist the next day. I said, I'm going to pick this up. And she said, and this was the CVS. I'll give her credit for this, over on Bay Ridge. She said, I will not fill that. And I'm like, what? She said, I will not fill that. You just had a prescription yesterday. I said, well, he gave me a new prescription. I said, I can turn this one in. She said, sir, I will not fill that. Now, I was not as reasonable as I was now. Because I was a little bit in pain. But she wouldn't do it. So, to her credit, she put 2 and 2 together. I had a prescription of Vicodin the day before, and I had a prescription of Dilaudid. She thought I was doctor shopping or what have you. Right. So she put 2 and 2 together. But to your point, no one ever said, and by the way, I was only on it for 4 days because I didn't care for it. Getting off that, it felt like I was quitting smoking again. It was, I was pacing around the house. I didn't feel the next day going, just 4 days put me over the top with that. Yeah. It just shows you how easy, Rush Limbaugh was doing what? 50 pills a day, something like that?
Well, Keith Mills, when he comes out and talks to us, Keith comes out and talks with us on the Not My Child panel, and he gives his story about how he slipped into pain pill addiction. And just think about, they've approved Oxycontin for 15-year-olds. Mm-hmm. A couple of weeks ago in the LA Times, there was a story by Big Pharma, by Oxycontin, one of the producers, about how they're just getting started and how they push advertising to overcome opiate use resistance. It's crazy. And then then add in, you guys know that I coach youth sports. Right. Add in the notion of, when I played ball, I didn't see an ACL tear until I made it to college. I didn't see you didn't see Tommy John surgery until you're in the minor leagues. Now you've got I mean, I lost...
Three Green Hornets are out every season with it, yeah.
You know, at my 13U level, I'm telling you, when I had my 13U team, you know, my kids are now... My first team is now 2020s. I'm back with my 13s again, but I lost a 13U to a torn ACL. Who hears... You know, when did you hear of a 13-year-old tearing an ACL 15, 20 years ago?
Never.
You listen to Dr. Andrews about sort of the repetitive nature of injuries that are coming from overuse in sports.
Well, because parents are having their kids just stay in one sport that, you know, they're specialized, and that's not good.
So when you think about the complexities of trying to solve a heroin addiction, a heroin crisis, and you add in a notion of, I mean, who thinks that specializing in sports will topple a set of dominoes that are going to topple 15-year-olds tearing their ACLs, that are going to put 15-year-olds on Oxycontin, that are going to give 15-year-olds the rush of an opiate, that are going to put 15-year-olds in the pipeline to drug addiction.
Well,
and try to solve that, because I can't arrest my way out of that.
No,
that is a cultural shift in the way. Take marijuana. Who's going to say the push is now to, you know, we've decriminalized marijuana, we've legalized medical marijuana. There is a push in the state to legalize marijuana. Look, you want to decrim? Okay, it's great. You want to legalize medical marijuana? We have legalized opiates. You know, there are people that use it. But when you want to push out only the positive side of marijuana, and I say positive side of marijuana use, and not talk about some of the science that says an under 25 brain is harmed by
that's
marijuana. You have no negative. There's no negative spin on marijuana use, and so kids are only hearing positives of marijuana use, and they're like, "Hey, I can use it."
You know, it's.
My daughter did that a little bit when she was looking at schools. She went through this little rebellious thing, and it was because I think we caught some pot in her room, and my ex-wife and I sort of called her on the table on it, and she's like, "Well, yeah, I want to go to Delaware where it's medically allowed."
Yeah, how's your glaucoma? Is it doing better now?
Huh? Yeah. So she, it was like, yeah, okay. She said, I'll find a doctor that'll prescribe it so I can smoke it. And I was like, well, no, and she grew out of that phase. I mean, that was just sort of a pushback phase, but. But kids do have that attitude. You're right.
But weed's been around forever, and I mean, I don't smoke it, but I mean, I have no problem with legalization. But I have read those studies too, because I've always said I'd rather my kids smoke marijuana than drink, because I've seen the effects of drinking, being Irish background, but on the other hand, I've read those studies as well, and they're confirmed just saying that kids under the age of 25, that there are some serious effects to brain development.
Yeah, because if you look at when I'm talking to kids, and so. I'm talking, these are firsthand feedback from students, high school students who say, I can smoke pot and it has the same effect as my Ritalin or my Adderall. The only difference is the Adderall unlocks your ability to learn. It might calm you down. What the kids see is the same outward manifestation. I'm calm, I'm not getting into any trouble. So in that sense, it works the same. But the Adderall unlocks your ability to comprehend and see what's coming in, whereas the marijuana destroys some short-term memory. It destroys some of the neural pathways in the developing brain, and it actually ends up inhibiting these guys. And so when you're trying to get that message across to these kids, it may have a real effect on how they approach what their mindset is when it comes time to make a choice as to whether or not to take a drug, because once you get into the cycle, like you said, it's bad. And that, to take this full loop is why prevention and outreach is so important to me as a public safety agency. I need to keep kids off of drugs, keep them out of criminal justice, keep them away from that cycle. The ounce of prevention is definitely worth the 10 pounds of cure it takes to roll somebody through a drug court. And then you look at the numbers. I graduate 50 people from drug court, 75. You work in my circuit court program and my district court program, and we do great work, and we may graduate 75 people this year. That's not even a drop in the bucket to the 915 overdoses we had, and that's just heroin. That doesn't talk about the alcohol poisoning. It doesn't talk about the DUI fatalities. It doesn't talk about any of that. So I'm graduating 75 people, which I'm ecstatic about. I need to keep the 226 kids that...
But you need to graduate 750 kids.
Yeah, or if I save... even if you take the raw number of 115 people died, and I graduate 75 from drug court, and mix in another 10 more, that's 200 people. Well, if that's the case, then our number should go down next year. It doesn't. That means that somebody is backfilling in that number. How do we stop the kids from backfilling in next year?
Here's a question. I want a one-word answer. It's a yes or a no question.
I'm a lawyer. You know that. Yes and no.
Yeah, you're a politician. That's right.
No. I am a prosecutor. I am not a politician, John Frenaye, and you know that.
He's about to come over the table with you. That'd be awesome.
Parental involvement in kids to keep them off of, and I know it's difficult to see that and everything else. Key or not key?
Key.
Okay, so that's a yes.
That was softball.
I'll tell you what. Let's just take a break here. I want to get a drink of water real quick, and when we come back, let's talk about the office and about the election and go from there.
And I got a question about something that's been fascinating me lately. That's called a teaser.
In 2015, Anne Arundel Medical Center had to transfer more than 1,100 mental health patients to a mental health facility outside of this area for care because the facilities they needed do not exist in our own community. These patients and families are our friends, loved ones, and co-workers, and they deserve better. Join Anne Arundel Medical Center and presenting sponsor M&T Bank on Saturday, April 29th in Annapolis at AAMC's Denim and Diamonds Bash. Denim and Diamonds is a wonderful evening under the stars, featuring fabulous cuisine, gourmet food trucks, silent auction, and dancing, all to support expanding mental health care in our community. It's an evening of great fun, but it's not just a party. For tickets and sponsorship, visit aamcdenimanddiamonds.org.
And we're back. Anne Arundel Medical Center and the Denims and Diamonds. They had it 2 years ago, and it was a great party. I remember you were there. You sucked down one of my free tickets, I think.
I think so.
And are you going to be there this year, you think?
Well, I'd like to see if I can make it out there. It's always a good event. And
I'll say, if they won't cop up a couple tickets, let me know. I might be able to find one for you.
But, you trying to shut it down or something?
But no, nothing like that. Always you don't mess with good events.
Just you want to walk in. I've always wanted to say, do you know who I am? I've never had the opportunity to do that.
Said no.
And I'm just a guy in a suit. Here we go.
This is a nice suit, though.
But,
I like that.
Welcome back here at the Maryland. You're back at the Maryland Crabs. We're here with Anne Arundel County State's Attorney Wes Adams and Tim Hamilton and John Frenaye, and we'll pick up. Now we're going. Tim, you
right. So my question is this, because I'm fascinated by this, because I'm easily outraged, and I'm on the internet a lot. So I know it's not a big problem here because Governor Hogan signed legislation last year that limited the civil forfeitures.
Okay.
From what I understand, that civil forfeitures probably been around for a while. So that's essentially what it is that districts can seize and police departments can seize property that was used or presumed to be used in a crime, or it doesn't have to be proven.
Drug crime.
Right. But I don't think it has to be. For example, I'm thinking of a case in Albuquerque where some kid was taking the train from El Paso. And we're going national here, but I want someone to explain it to me, and you're a lawyer type. So they were going from El Paso to...
I'm really good with Maryland law, not so good with Albuquerque law.
Yeah, but I think the law is... the principle's the same. Basically, the kid had about $15,000 in his pocket. He was going to L.A. because he wanted to make it big in hip-hop. And so they detected an odor of marijuana. They searched his bag. They didn't find anything, but they found $15,000. And they said, well, he had to prove that the money was not used. It was not from a crime.
Sure.
But now I know that some jurisdictions, and there's one down in Texas, I think around Texarkana, that's particularly bad. Some jurisdictions use this as an alternate way to fund law enforcement. The principle is that there's not enough money in the budget, so this is a way that and it's divided among local jurisdictions and feds and what have you.
Okay.
But I think the ACLU, the Koch brothers, there's such a mix of people who've gotten together to fight the civil forfeiture. Most civil liberty groups. Now, like I said, it's not an issue in Maryland for the most part, because from what I understand, that the governor had signed legislation, I think last year, where he limited the civil forfeiture, and I think that the sheriffs...
They shifted the burden. Last year when they signed when the new legislation went into effect, I think there's a minimum threshold. I believe it was a $300 threshold, and then a little more due process of proving that it was connected versus burden of them proving that it wasn't connected.
Right, like it was like the state of Texas versus $3,000 found in a bag at this address.
But that's always on a civil forfeiture. And on a civil forfeiture, that's what it always is. It's the state versus the piece of property. And then the property owner comes in and claims that it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So it's just a little bit different. Our current legislation is probably a little more pro defendant or victim in that regard, that the burden's on us to prove versus the burden not being the burden on them to prove that it wasn't.
It was just interesting because it's one of those things that it makes for a good story, because the outrage that you have when you're just reading about this, about the guy. I think it came to in Illinois where I think it was a sheriff, the county sheriff, he loaned his car to someone, and they stole some wire or something. They seized his car and he couldn't get it back, and that's what thrust it to the spotlight.
I guess that would give him some motivation to change it.
Right, yeah, so that wasn't nearly as exciting as I thought, but just read it. It's a great story.
Interesting. 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to come up with things, but the word on the street was that if you wanted to do a crime, you come over to Anne Arundel County because...
That was in the newsletter, criminal newsletter.
Yeah, because the judiciary tended to be a little bit more lax than other jurisdictions, whether it be PG, Baltimore, whatnot, and that was primarily, I heard, drugs and stuff like that. And it seems, and I would tend to, as an outsider looking in and looking at the news and whatnot, I would probably tend to agree with that. I mean, I've seen some crazy rulings come down off of the bench of various judges over the years that you just sort of scratch your head. I know one brought Bill O'Reilly knocking on Joe Mank's door.
Which one was that?
It was a child molestation, and he had basically released the guy back to home arrest, and then
I remember that.
Allowed him to go out to work on his.
He squeezed that in right after the War and Christmas story.
He should have had him come babysit his grandchildren on the weekend. That would have been my suggestion. But it's really changed. I mean, we sit there and we see that lately. I mean, I see the releases that come out of your office. And I don't think you're out looking for the guy that's smoking a joint on the corner to lock him up for 20 years, which probably by the letter of the law you probably could. But some of these larger drug deals. I mean, we've had a couple of heroin busts, we've had a couple of large drug deals, we've had some human trafficking, we've had some murders. There's been some pretty grotesque molestation, child endangerment cases and whatnot. And it seems to me that the county has taken, in the last 2 years, and I will credit since you've come into office on that it's really seems to have turned around. Do you agree? And what have you done to facilitate that?
Well, he's not going to start. Well, I'm not that effective. I don't do that. That's
no. What I would say is, what I really credit, I think, which is what a difference is that I have asked, and my lawyers have responded with great advocacy. They have worked hard to present solid reasons to the judiciary so that they would hold the people accountable with legitimate sentences in cases where it's warranted. And I think what you're starting to see is my lawyers, and this is overall philosophy, and I prosecuted in Prince George's County in Baltimore City. I didn't prosecute here. So, I don't have some of that perspective that you do on a day-to-day basis from back then. I can mention it anecdotally, and I saw some cases. But the truth is, I really work for my lawyers to take a case and look at it as a trial when they get it, prepare it to the degree that it would be worthy of taking to trial, and being ready to take a case into trial.
How long does that take, out of curiosity?
Depends on the nature of the case. You could take a shoplift and be ready to try it in 7 days. You could take a complex body homicide, and it might take you a year to pull all the pieces together, to get the forensics back, connect all the dots, and get your witnesses in line. And so it really just depends on the complexity of the particular case you get. I'd like to think that the judges are responding to our advocacy, and I am pleased that we are getting sentences like the 16-year sentence we got in the drug case yesterday with 5.
I mean, and I will say I don't want to say wouldn't say it's soft on crime, but I'm seeing that the sentences are fair. I mean, where you say somebody that may be up for 50 years.
Right.
It may not necessarily get to 50 years, but it's certainly not getting the, okay, well, we're going to suspend, 49 and a half of those years.
Well,
and I mean, there's significant sentences. They're meaningful sentences.
Sure. I mean, look, I'd like to take credit for it. I think that we, as a...
You've got an election coming up. You got to take credit for it.
I've worked hard with my lawyers, and we have a philosophy that has asked my lawyers to go in and advocate, not just generally, but specifically, and to present great reasons why. Like I said, one of my lawyers just put a PowerPoint in front of Judge Shacklich yesterday, and she handed down a great 16-year sentence on a guy that really deserved it. We have worked hard to be advocates for the positions that we need, and I think that's an essential role of what we do as prosecutors. We speak, and we are the voice right there for the victim, whether the victim is you as a person because somebody hit you or beat you, or whether it's the community in general because they're dealing drugs on your street corner. We have to make that point, and that is our responsibility. So I'm proud of the work that my lawyers are doing. They're doing exactly what we could, what I could ask for them to do. And I am happy that I'm glad that you see that some of that work is paying off, because in the end, I'll just relate to a story. When I first got in here, John Church and Jason Knight took over a homicide case. When we had taken
two your attorneys.
John is the deputy state's attorney. Jason Knight is the chief of violent crimes. Oh. So they took over this case. The plea offer in it had been 25 years, and John and Jason developed a new witness, somebody that was known to the previous prosecutors, but they didn't want to use. Those two guys had come with me over. They had been skilled and had experience in dealing with witnesses that were difficult, that flipped, that you might have to Nance Hardy or might recant on the stand. So they were comfortable using that kind of witness, and it changed the whole scope of the case, so that when we went back to the defense attorney, and I happened to speak to the defense attorney directly because I had tried cases against him in Baltimore City, we doubled the offer. We went from 25 to 50 years.
As a plea deal.
As a plea deal. And he laughed at me and he goes, well, isn't this some kind of justice? If I had taken a plea 2 months ago, I'd have gotten 25. Now you're in here, Wes, offering me 50.
Should have taken it 2 months ago.
But the best part of the story is he walks back and he says, yeah, well, I talked to my guy, and he said, I told him that this is the plea offer, and the guy says, well, these guys don't joke. Guy down the hall took 55 years, and he didn't even pull the trigger, so I'm going to take that deal. So we had worked at the same time. One of my other prosecutors, Pam Alden, who's the chief of my sex offense unit, she was handling a murder. She brought a case in. We worked it out. She developed it a little bit more, put together a 50 and 55-year plea. The defendants took it, and that made an impact on other defendants inside of the jail system. They heard about this case, and it impacted guys' decision to plea. They hear. And
it was funny. I was listening to that podcast. There was a phenomenon a couple years ago. That was the Serial. That was the Adnan Syed case up in Baltimore. And it was funny. At one point, he said, since he's been in prison, he told everybody, and everyone's told him, always, always, always take the deal, always. And there's some guys, well, I'm not going to plead guilty to say. He goes, always take it. He goes because.
Can't say that, but yeah. Look, I like to think, John, we have worked very hard, and I have asked a lot of my lawyers to develop their advocacy in sentencing.
Are these? How much of a turnover did you have when you came in here? I mean, the old administration under Frank Weathersby seemed to be very deeply rooted in cronyism and the old boy network, and you don't have to comment on that. I'll own that.
I'm on him all the time about that.
I'll own that. I don't need
talk to him after this.
But I know that you had some turnover when you first came in.
Sure.
Which is to be expected when any kind of new leadership. I mean, what's your tenure in the state's attorney's office of the attorneys that you have right now prosecuting crimes?
We have anywhere from, I think we just hired one the other day, to I have a good mix of, like any good team, I have a great mix of some veteran prosecutors. And Pam Alban, who's chief of the sex offense, is, I think, a 19-year prosecutor. And
I thought you were going to say 19-year-old. I'm like,
no,
really?
Billy Katzif, who's been here for 37 years, who works with our screening unit, and Larry Caporale, who's in charge of my property crimes division, has close 20 or 20 plus years, and Warren Davis, and And then I have Jason Knight, who came over, and even the guys that came with me. Jason's a 10-plus year prosecutor with Baltimore City and Prince George's County in his background. John Church, 20 years as a police officer, so knows the county, and then almost 10 years as a prosecutor. We have Claude Devasty Jones, my other deputy, 17 years as a prosecutor, chief of the district court division in Howard County. I've got people with as young as 3, 4, 5 years in my doing violent crimes, and you're fresh out off the boat. So we have every level of prosecutor, great blend of new blood, energy, old blood experience, all the way up and down.
It sounds like it's working. All right, what's your one case? Your biggest yes. You got to brag about one case that you've had in the last 2 years.
Wow, just one?
Yeah.
Larry Adams. Don't shoot a police officer.
Okay.
Look, public safety. Those guys go out and risk their lives every day. We are literally. I mean, they're the last line of civil defense. Without law and order, you don't get to walk down the street safely.
Now, Larry Adams, for those that aren't familiar, he was an Anne Arundel County police officer that was on routine patrol. There was something suspicious at a 7-Eleven out in Cape St. Clair, near Cape St. Clair.
He actually stopped to help a woman whose car looked like it had broken down on the side of the road. She mentioned that her boyfriend went over just to get gas at the 7-Eleven. Larry was going over to give the guy $5 to buy gas.
Right.
And ends up getting shot in the neck.
Rehab, and I don't know if he's back on the force yet.
He is back on the force and has shifted through a couple of different positions.
Light duty and
but he's on full duty.
Right. But, yeah. Okay, absolutely.
That's from a case, because I handled that case. But really, I think the biggest success that I'm going to talk about is the Fernandez drug bust. It was the largest single heroin bust in Anne Arundel County. It was the first wiretap that this office, that the Anne Arundel County State's Attorney's Office, in its history, originated. So when we came in, we ran the wiretap, not a Fed. The Feds didn't run it. It wasn't a conjunction. It was the State's Attorney's Office for Anne Arundel County working with the Narcotics Division of the Anne Arundel County Police Department. We found a target. We put together a wire. We worked the wire, worked our way up the chain, got a guy who was importing millions of dollars of cocaine. We took off. We take off
and
3.5
This is that 15 people that were arrested, and then the ringleader, if you will, was still missing for several weeks afterwards.
And we got him,
right.
And he's pled to 28 years. And I mean, that's never before done here. The Narcotics Division of the Police Department.
And it took a lot of drugs off the street.
Yeah, it took a ton of drugs, and it took 12 or 15 guns off the street, including on automatic weapons. It was just a huge. That's law enforcement. It's proactive. Go out and help the community law enforcement.
What's the one that got away?
I'm still waiting on that.
And therein lies the politician.
Just a prosecutor, John.
Just a simple prosecutor standing here in front of you.
But
just a guy in a suit.
You are an elected official.
Of course.
And you do have to run for election again in 2018.
Yep.
Certainly, I would say that you are probably making a name and a case. As a prosecutor would for re-election. I haven't heard anything. It's a little bit off as far as any kind of challengers and whatnot. You did fight a somewhat dirty race coming into this.
I fought in a dirty race. I think I fought a very clean race.
Yeah.
But I did fight in a very dirty race.
Yeah.
Fought off.
That just sort of really pisses me off when you see that. I mean, I think that your office should be somewhat apolitical as well as the judges, and that's my own personal opinion there. But I mean, when you see, Judge Asti was in a really ugly race, and I mean, certainly Cynthia Barber with the 4 judges that ran recently, you were there. I mean, it'd be nice to take it out of it, but I don't have the perfect answer on how to.
Well, you have to balance. You want to balance accountability. I'm elected. I should be accountable to people.
Right.
With the ugly nature of what could be an ugly nature of partisan politics. The one good thing I'll say about law and order and being a prosecutor is that a guy doesn't care when he sticks a gun in your back and says kick it out. He doesn't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. When someone's going to break into the house, they're not looking to see if there's what your political affiliation is. Quite honestly, they don't color, creed, political affiliation, marital status, you name it.
No, it's just an opportunity.
Right. And so being safe resonates across all. It resonates across socioeconomic levels. It resonates against political affiliation. It resonates everywhere. I mean, people want to be safe. And so I think it's a place where electorates still look for someone that's effective, fair, honest, has integrity, that they can trust. And in the end, I think that's why I resonated with people.
I think it really has too. I think from a personal point of view, from what I've seen, you've done an outstanding job.
Thank you.
Regardless of whether you're a Republican or Democrat or independent or whatever that works out to be. And I certainly thank you for your time. I mean, we've taken a whole bunch of your time.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks. With all the bad people, even in this
learned a lot. I mean, what resources are there? Resources that you've got for the general public? I mean, hopefully nobody just deals with you in drug court. And,
no, we have a website. I have a community outreach coordinator. Her name is Carol Perico. She's the one who helps me get into schools, and we help develop programs. Heather Epkins, my communications director, she helps with our website. We keep people informed. I get around the county as much as I can, and
a lot of information there. What is the website? It's
AnneArundelStatesAttorney.com.
Yep, AnneArundelStatesAttorney.com.
www.AnneArundelStatesAttorney.com. I think we're Anne Arundel at Anne Arundel SAO on Twitter.
Okay.
There's at Wes Adams 2014 is on Twitter.
Got to change that up?
No, that's when I started. I like people know where I came.
Going to go with the throwback. Yeah. The throwback Twitter handle.
Or there were 2013 Wes Adams
John,
before
never
him.
forget where you came from, right?
That's true. Well, Wes, thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure.
Tim, finish this up.
All right, so you can find us on Twitter at MD Krabs Podcast. You can get John at Annapolis, me at Tim Hamilton 47. You can email us at info@marylandkrabs.com, info@themarylandkrabs.com, and themarylandkrabs.com for the website. And you can find us on Facebook at our page and our group.
Tim, what's the 47 for?
It's a lucky number. Can I have my phone back?
It's the kind of beer he drinks.
It's right there.
Colt 47s.
So, but thanks for having us on. That was great of you.
Appreciate you guys taking the time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
This has been the Maryland Krabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandkrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.